from the Sustainability Update Project related to agriculture, resources, public facilities, and parks, and gather feedback and answer questions. My name is Annie Murphy, Senior Planner in the newly formed Community Development and Infrastructure Department, which is a merger of the Planning and Public Works departments. Natisha Williams, another Senior Planner involved in this project, will be presenting with me tonight. Stephanie Hansen and Anna Schenk from our team are also on the call and are available to answer questions as needed. There's no live Spanish translation available for tonight's meeting, but a translation of the slides will be available on the project website. Before we get started with the agenda, here is some logistical information. Tonight's meeting is being recorded, and the recording will be available on the project website. We'll have about a 35-minute presentation followed by question and answers for the remainder of the meeting time. If you have access to a computer with a microphone, you can watch, listen, and provide comments through your computer using the Teams meeting link. If you do not have access to a computer with a microphone and wish to ask a question or make comments, you must call in by dialing 916-318-9542. When prompted, enter the conference ID number 869-684-460#. If you are participating by phone, you must also mute the sound on your computer. All participants are currently muted, and the meeting chat is disabled during the presentation. Please remain muted and hold your comments until the end of the presentation. If you have a comment about something specific that we have covered in the slides, we can always pull the slides back up to guide our discussion. At the end of the presentation, we will explain how to ask questions and make comments. So tonight, we will begin with an overview of how these updates fit within the framework of sustainability. Then we will review the proposed policy and regulatory changes by topic area, beginning with agriculture, then moving on to discuss conservation and natural resources, followed by public facilities and parks. Finally, we will explain how the topic of environmental justice is incorporated into the county's updated policies. We will also discuss the project schedule and different ways to participate, and then we'll open up the meeting for comments. Just a note that if you are looking for an overview of the entire Sustainability Update project or information from previous meetings, you can access these presentations on the project website. Santa Cruz County is a place of great natural beauty and diverse natural resources. From the mountains and forests to coastal habitats, our region supports ecosystems rich in biodiversity. Nearly 90% of the unincorporated county land is located in rural areas, and land uses such as agriculture, open space, timber, and parks predominate. And Santa Cruz County has been a national leader in the protection of these natural resources for decades. The county's existing general plan local coastal program was adopted in 1994 with a focus on preserving resources and limiting urban expansion outside the urban and rural services line. The urban services line is shown in blue in the map on your slide. After more than 25 years, the general plan local coastal program now requires updating to define a sustainable growth pattern for the future of our region. The sustainability update outlines this future consistent with three fundamental concepts: economic strength, social equity, and environmental protection. As described in community meeting number 1, the sustainability update plans for development that can accommodate the county's projected growth, and development will continue to be focused within the urban area. The USL-RSL concept remains at the core of the county's development framework, and the county's environmental protections remain intact with this update. In terms of policy and code updates, the project includes partial updates to the county's General Plan Chapter 5, Agriculture, Natural Resources, and Conservation, formerly titled Conservation and Open Space. This chapter provides a framework for the conservation of cultural natural resources, including timber, minerals, biotic resources, and open space. Substantive updates focus on amending policies to support commercial agriculture, as well as other updates needed to ensure consistency with state laws and the county code. The project also partially amends Chapter 7, titled Parks, Recreation, and Public Facilities, to ensure that community facilities and infrastructure are adequate to accommodate projected growth and to be consistent with the current practices and plans, including the Coastal Act. In both chapters 5 and 7, policy language has been streamlined where possible to reference the implementing code sections. Some content has been reorganized for clarity. County Code Chapter 1310, the zoning ordinance, includes updated regulations for agricultural zone districts and agricultural uses to implement updated policies. Chapter 1650, the Agricultural Land Preservation Ordinance, is also updated to incorporate policy changes related to public facility uses. Code sections in Chapter 1310 for other zone districts will be reviewed as part of the code modernization discussion in the next community meeting on April 20th. All of the proposed amendments to the zoning ordinance and general plan can be viewed on the project website under Project Documents. Let's move on now to discuss agriculture. Agriculture is essential to our community, literally sustaining us as well as contributing significantly to the local economy. Agricultural land also contributes to open space and rural character. Commercial agricultural land, which is land that is best suited to the commercial production of food and livestock and includes agricultural resource soils, represents approximately 20% of the county land area. Commercial agricultural land is zoned commercial agriculture, or CA. Existing policies and regulations recognize the importance of commercial agriculture and protect agricultural land for agricultural use while limiting residential uses. The agriculture or A zone district includes land in rural areas that does not contain agricultural resource soils, but can in some cases support agricultural uses and agricultural support uses, and is also appropriate for low density residential use. This zone district also contributes to open space. Since the general plan was adopted in 1994, the local agricultural economy has evolved. In 2014 and 2015, the planning department met with the farming community to better understand how policies and regulations might be updated to support modern farming practices. Many larger farming operations have consolidated, and farming on multiple leased parcels is now typical. This has resulted in the need for centralized operations, such as a central location for the storage of agricultural equipment and agricultural services that can serve multiple parcels. For smaller farms, including family farms and many local organic growers, supplemental income from agricultural tourism is often needed for the farm to remain economically viable. Similarly, the needs of wineries and breweries have changed over the decades. Existing regulations require updating to meet the needs of local wineries and breweries. To support modern farming practices, the general plan and county code are being amended to allow new and expanded agricultural support uses on CA land. From a sustainability perspective, these changes ensure that commercial agriculture remains viable in the long term and reduces the pressure to convert agricultural land to residential use. An early draft of the proposed code changes supporting agricultural uses was reviewed in 2015 with the Farm Bureau, the Agricultural Policy Advisory Commission, and the Board of Supervisors. In the general plan and county code, new or expanded agricultural support uses would be allowed that serve multiple parcels owned or leased by the agricultural operator. Ag support uses include large areas or buildings for storing agricultural equipment. Agricultural service establishments such as farm equipment repair and agricultural research and development facilities are currently allowed in the agricultural zone district and would now also be allowed in the CA district under the sustainability update. Agricultural tourism would also be an allowed use on CA. In addition to farm stands and U-pick farms, the code clarifies that agritourism can include events such as farm dinners, educational activities, school field trips, and farm stays. To support agricultural practices, streamlined reviews would be allowed for certain uses such as greenhouses. Changes are also proposed to allow the extension of water or sewer district boundaries to include commercial agricultural parcels where necessary to address public health and environmental concerns. Policies would allow the placement of water and sewer lines and access to wastewater treatment on CA land where necessary to prevent saltwater intrusion or allow groundwater recharge. To ensure that the county can provide essential public facilities where they are needed, the project expands the list of PF uses allowed on CA to add a general category of essential public facilities. These facilities could be considered on CA land where a compelling need exists. An example of such a use is the Buena Vista landfill site, proposed to be converted to a transfer station that is located on CA. County staff conducted a multiple-year search and could not locate another viable location for this use. The Buena Vista landfill site is shown on the lower right of the slide. For essential public facility uses, limited subdivisions of CA land would be allowed. Proposed amendments will also allow access to water distribution and wastewater treatment for essential public, quasi-public uses where no other location with access to these services feasible and no other options exist for water or wastewater treatment. While allowing new and expanded ag support uses on CA, regulations would continue to require discretionary review of these uses and require that projects be sited and designed to protect agricultural land. Agricultural support uses would be required to be sited off of farmable land where possible to cluster development on the site to protect the farming potential of the site. To further protect agricultural viability, a new concept is introduced of a development area, which is the total area on a site that is covered by structures or any other material that may affect the agricultural soil. Projects that would result in a total development area on a CA parcel exceeding 35,000 square feet would be required to redesign the project to reduce the total development area below the threshold or consider alternative sites. Where these options are not feasible, the property owner would be required to place farmable land in a permanent agricultural easement. These standards protecting agricultural land would also apply to essential community public facility uses on CA land. Existing standards limiting residential development are retained, as well as existing development standards and agricultural buffer setback requirements. Similarly to the regulations for commercial agriculture, regulations for wineries and breweries have not been updated significantly in decades. Planning staff reached out to local wineries and breweries and held a series of meetings in 2014 and 2015 to update regulations to better support the on-site marketing needs of wineries and breweries. Code drafts were also shared with the community in a series of community meetings and were reviewed by the Board of Supervisors. Wineries and breweries are allowed in the CA and A zone district, as well as the residential agriculture and rural residential zone districts. Updated regulations allow indoor and outdoor tastings and marketing events such as tours with limitations on hours, numbers of guests, and amplified music to protect residential neighborhoods from impacts. Development applications would include conditions as needed to limit impacts. On CA, wineries and breweries would be required to be ancillary to an agricultural farming use and to be sited and designed to protect agricultural resource soils. Now, before moving on to discuss natural resources, we are interested in your feedback regarding these updates to agricultural policies. So we have a poll that we will bring up, that have a couple of questions for you.
Great, thanks, Annie. So the question that we're going to be sending to you just shortly is, which of the following uses do you support on agricultural land? And the answers that we have here are agritourism activities, agricultural research, consolidated storage of agricultural land, agricultural equipment, and essential public facilities. And we will launch the poll right now. So you should see the poll now on your screen.
And you can go ahead and select any of or all of the following uses that you support and then go ahead and submit, and we can share the results.
Yes, you are able to select all of the options that apply, and you should be able to access it through the chat and see these live results coming in. Okay, so we've gotten a few responses so far, and it looks like the Largest amount of support right now is for agricultural research, but all of them seem to have support from members that have joined us today. Great. Okay, thank you so much for participating in our poll. And I'll go ahead and close that and get back to the presentation.
Thank you, Natisha. So now we'll move on to discuss conservation of natural resources, beginning with water. Like many communities in California, water in Santa Cruz is severely limited. The county works with local water agencies and districts to protect water quality and plan for future water use. In the county, local water districts and groundwater management agencies are responsible for planning for the water supply. The 2014 Sustainable Groundwater Management Act requires agencies to prepare a 20-year plan to protect groundwater supplies. A new strategy in the general plan supports groundwater sustainability and brings the general plan into consistency with this act. The county also coordinates with the water districts in developing urban watershed management plans. When new development is proposed, the water agencies approve water service and will issue will-serve letters if the proposed development is in accordance with the forecasts provided in these plans. The county plays an important role in protecting the quality of the water supply and in requiring users to conserve water. Existing requirements in the county code and the county design criteria provide development standards that protect water quality, protect aquatic and marine habitats, control pollutants, and support groundwater recharge.
Hey,
Policies and
Annie,
regulations.
can I
Yes.
interrupt? I'm sorry,
Yes.
we're having a technical glitch, I think. We're
Oh,
having a little trouble sharing our screen.
okay.
So if everybody can just hang on one moment and we'll try to get that fixed.
Annie, if you have the slides, can you reshare them?
Um, hang on a moment. Thank you for bearing with us, everyone, while we work out our technical issues here. Oh, yeah. I don't know how to.
Penny, you're muted. I think I have the slides back up if you can hear me.
Yes, I can. So it looks like we're good to go then.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you, everyone. I appreciate your patience. I will, now that we have the slides back up, I will begin again with the water conservation topic. So in the county, local water districts and groundwater management agencies are responsible for planning for the water supply. The 2014 Sustainable Groundwater Management Act requires water agencies prepare a 20-year plan to protect groundwater supplies. A new strategy in the general plan supports groundwater sustainability and brings the general plan into consistency with this act. The county also coordinates with the water districts in developing urban watershed management plans. When new development is proposed, the water agencies approve water service and issue will-serve letters if the proposed development is in accordance with the forecasts provided in these plans. The county also plays an important role in protecting the quality of the water supply. Existing requirements in the county code and the county design criteria provide development standards that protect water quality, habitats, control pollutants, and support groundwater recharge. Policies and regulations also require water conservation. A primary change in the general plan is to update policies to be consistent with low-impact design strategies already required in the county design criteria. These strategies require new development to maintain the capacity of the site to retain stormwater and recharge groundwater. Low-impact design strategies include bioswales, which utilize landscaping to filter water and screen pollutants. An example of a bioswale is provided in the photo on the bottom left of the slide. The new Santa Cruz County design guidelines also support low-impact design and water conservation, encouraging features such as rainwater cisterns and green roofs. In addition to these more targeted strategies and policies, the sustainability update continues to focus growth in urban areas. New policies and regulations, including the new ResFlex Zone District, further focus growth in urban areas and reduce the need to develop new sources of water. Allowing for higher intensity development on sites in urban areas also supports water conservation by reducing the water needed for landscaping. The existing policies and regulations protecting biotic, timber, and mineral resources remain in place. Policies in some cases have been streamlined to reference the applicable code sections. New policies are added to support existing programs regarding salmon conservation and improving riparian habitats. Open space policies in the general plan protect areas devoted to open space uses that are essentially undeveloped. Open space areas include designated open space, mapped sensitive habitat, areas for outdoor recreation, and areas protecting natural resources. The updated open space section in the general plan includes a new inventory that identifies categories of land with open space values. Policies throughout the general plan that protect open space, including Chapter 7 policies protecting parks, are identified in the open space section. Policies that protect open space, which include limits on development density outside urban areas, remain in place. In the visual resources section of Chapter 5, the policy protecting scenic assets such as ocean views and ridge tops that have not yet been mapped has been strengthened to require design review for development on these sites. Visual resource policies in the general plan also protect scenic corridors and roads. The local scenic designation for the entirety of Highway 1 within the county was applied prior to the 1994 general plan. Since that time, much of the tree cover along the highway in the urban area has been lost. Analysis by planning staff identified areas of the urban Highway 1 corridor that no longer meet the criteria for scenic designation as provided in the general plan. Consequently, the urban portion of Highway 1 between Western Drive and Santa Cruz to the west and Bay Avenue and Capitola to the east would no longer be considered locally scenic. The photo on the bottom left of the slide shows Highway 1 along Mission Street, which is within the portion of the highway that would not retain the local scenic designation. In contrast, the photo on the right shows Highway 1 near Rio Del Mar, which retains its forested appearance and is within the area of Highway 1 that would retain its local scenic designation. This change would mean that development along the portion of Highway 1 between Western Drive and Bay Avenue that is visible from the highway would no longer be subject to special requirements that the development preserve or improve the visual quality of the viewshed. In addition to protecting natural resources, the general plan and county code also protect cultural resources. The updated general plan includes new policies that recognize tribal cultural resources, which include sites and cultural landscapes that are significant to a Native American tribe and are eligible for listing on the California Register of Historic Resources. Policies are added requiring the county to work with affected tribes to identify and protect these resources. New policies are added requiring consultation with Native American tribes as required under state law for general plan amendments. Policies have also been updated to implement best practices regarding archaeological sites. For historic resources, a new policy encourages the maintenance and upkeep of historic resources to reduce the risk of demolition through neglect. A new strategy also clarifies that a historic report prepared by a qualified consultant is required prior to the demolition of any structure that is more than 50 years old or older and that may have the potential to qualify as a historic resource as determined by county planning staff. And now I will turn the presentation over to Natisha Williams.
Thank you, Annie. All right, so we're going to talk a little bit about public facilities and parks. The Parks, Recreation, and Public Facilities element, or the PPF element, addresses topics related to providing community facilities and infrastructure to support existing and future populations, and includes policies on parks, recreational and cultural facilities, public services, and utility infrastructure. As noted earlier in this presentation, this is a partial update proposed for Chapter 7, so the changes are not as extensive as some of the other general plan chapters that we've reviewed. The proposed element addresses the same topics as the existing element and incorporates some updates to a chapter that has not been substantially changed since 1994 when it was adopted. The proposed changes include updates to make this chapter consistent with new state laws, including new general plan requirements and the California Coastal Act, as well as consistent with local plans that have been adopted since 1994, such as the County Park Strategic Plan and the county's Climate Action Strategy. Some minor substantive changes were made to bring policies up to date with current practices, such as drainage and stormwater management policies. But most of the changes to this chapter simply streamline language and consolidate and reorganize existing policies. The public facility institutional land use designation was previously included in Chapter 2, the former land use element, and was moved to Chapter 7 to consolidate public facility policies in one location. The P designation characterizes land used for a variety of public purposes, public serving uses such as schools, fire stations, government buildings, water supply and treatment facilities, as well as privately owned facilities built and maintained for public purposes, such as churches, hospitals, and landfills. The designation was updated to establish standards for maximum building intensity as required by state law, and it sets a maximum building height consistent with standards in the implementing public facility zone district, as well as the new maximum lot coverage range of 40 to 95%, which accommodates the variety of public and quasi-public serving uses appropriate on P-designated lands. And like the other land uses in the general plan, with this update, density calculations move to gross acreages. The P designation is also intended for appropriate ancillary public facility activities, and these revisions retain existing policies that permit residential development on P designated lands, including workforce housing. Changes to this section reflect density increases proposed in urban residential designations in the built environment element. And in the county code, proposed changes to the PF district incorporate new development standards that are consistent with commercial zone district standards, as well as new medical mixed use standards. And many of these changes were reviewed in more detail in community meeting number 2 on the built environment, and a recording of that meeting is available on the project website if you'd like to learn more. So as we noted earlier, most of the major changes proposed to General Plan Chapter 7 simply consolidate and streamline the language, including combining some of the related public services sections of the chapter. Other sections include more substantive changes to update for consistency with current plans and best practices, particularly those policies related to utilities and infrastructure. So Annie already covered some of the water supply and stormwater policies. There was also some new policy based on the county's climate action strategy related to wastewater reclamation and energy conservation. Some updates to integrated waste management section include consistency with new state waste reduction laws, and the chapter also incorporates a new telecommunications and broadband objective. Parks policies, excuse me, Parks policies in this element address land uses related to recreation, set standards for parks, and address the provision of adequate park facilities in our community. The revised element generally retains, consolidates, and updates objectives and policies related to parks and recreation, including coastal recreation and cultural arts. The Parks, Recreation, and Open Space Land Use Designation, or OR, characterizes land use intended for outdoor recreation and the provision of open space, ranging from active recreational uses such as neighborhood parks and recreational facilities like Simpkins Swim Center, to more low-intensity passive uses that preserve scenic values of open space lands. The designation was updated to establish new development limitations as required by state law, and this includes a maximum building height, which reflects existing standards in the implementing zone districts, the PR, or Parks, Recreation, and Open Space District, as well as the TP, or Timber Production District. It also includes a new maximum lot coverage of 0 to 40%, which accommodates the existing range of building intensity allowed on OR designated land. Changes to parks planning are not proposed except to reflect any projects that have been completed since this chapter was last adopted, and as well to align with the county park strategic plan. The strategic plan was completed in 2018 by the County Parks Department and developed in collaboration with the local community. The plan sets out a vision and strategic priorities for the county's park system for the next 10 years. So a new goal was created based on this strategic plan, Goal 2.0, opportunities for all, to provide opportunities for people of all ages, income groups, and abilities to recreate in active park spaces and enjoy passive natural open spaces as well. Some coastal policies were retained in this chapter, specifically those related to recreation at the beach and maintenance of coastal access, because they're closely tied to the concepts of parks and public facilities included in Chapter 7. But coastal access is primarily addressed in Chapter 3, the access and mobility element, as we reviewed in last week's community meeting. The coastal recreation and access policies are also closely related to trails and recreation corridors section of Chapter 7. The section remains largely the same, with more of a focus on recreation that works in conjunction with trails policies included in Chapter 3, the access and mobility element. It also strengthens support for the development of a future regional trails master plan that would link county park facilities and implement the Monterey Bay Sanctuary Scenic Trail and California Coastal Trail. We'd also like to talk a little bit about environmental justice, which is a new topic area that must be incorporated into general plans in California. Environmental justice means equitable protection from environmental and health hazards for everyone. County staff have chosen to address this important topic throughout the general plan rather than as a separate chapter. Environmental justice policies are denoted throughout the general plan with an EJ mark. And environmental justice themes that are addressed with the new general plan policies include pollution, exposure and air quality, equitable access to safe and sanitary homes, food, transportation, and other public service and facilities, physical activity opportunities, and community engagement opportunities, as well as improvements and programs that address the need of disadvantaged communities, which are identified in the map on the lower right of this slide. Policies, regulations, and guidelines related to agriculture, resources, parks, and public facilities address these environmental justice themes through various policies, including farm worker housing policies, appropriate siting and buffering of agricultural uses to reduce hazards of pesticides, equitable provision of public amenities and infrastructure, including water service, sewer, fire, and other essential services, new and more forward-looking telecommunications and broadband policies that lay the groundwork for expanding broadband access to underserved areas, prioritizing the creation of parks and open spaces in underserved areas, and expanding access to recreation opportunities, particularly in the South County, and also retaining existing workforce housing policies to support the development of school employee housing and affordable housing as an essential public use. Now we wanted to take a moment to go over the timeline for this project. The draft general plan amendments, county code amendments, design guidelines, and map amendments were made available on the project website at the end of February and are available for public review right now. You will be able to review and comment on these documents throughout the public process until the documents are adopted and certified. This evening's meeting is one of a series of community meetings which are scheduled through May 9th. The draft environmental impact report will be released on April 14th and available for public comment until May 31st. In relation to tonight's topics, the EIR will include a focus on analyzing impacts to agricultural land and water resources. The Planning Commission, as well as other county commissions with an interest in the project, will hold study sessions in the spring of summer of this year. After these study sessions, a final EIR will be released, which will address public comments received on the draft EIR. And at the same time, updated versions of the project documents may also be released. Next, public hearings at the Planning Commission and Board of Supervisors are scheduled to begin in August and be held through November. After adoption at the Board of Supervisors, most amendments will need to go on to the Coastal Commission for certification. This slide shows a schedule of the series of community meetings. After tonight's presentation, there will be 2 additional virtual meetings held on the topics of code modernization and map amendments, as well as the EIR. Okay, so now we've left some time for questions and discussion. To make a comment, if you're using a computer, you may type your comment or question into the meeting chat box, or you may raise your hand by clicking on the hand symbol at the top of your screen, choose Raise Hand, and wait to be called on. When the moderator announces your name or phone number, click on the microphone button at the top of your screen to unmute yourself and start speaking. If you wish to provide a comment by phone, you can enter *6 to unmute your phone. To comment, please state your name and proceed with your comment. At the end of your comment, your microphone will be muted again. If you no longer have a comment or question, click again on the hand symbol to lower your hand. We're going to go through the questions and raised hands first, and then go through questions and comments in the chat. Great.
So I see Brendan Cork with his hand up first.
Hi, thanks so much for the presentation. Super informative. My name is Brendan Quirk. I'm a resident of the city of Santa Cruz. And I'm just wondering, I saw that timeline that you displayed there. And if we have a project that we will be proposing to the county that could be affected by these code changes, will the county take into consideration the code changes before they are adopted, or will that not be a factor in our application?
You know, I'm gonna defer to Stephanie for this question.
Thanks, Natisha. You know, the policy group that's worked on this general plan update is often involved in development reviews. So we'll look at proposals that come in and permits that come in, and make sure that they're consistent, or at least give folks a heads up if there's an inconsistency we see with an upcoming ordinance or general plan policy. So we try to coordinate with the development review team in order to make that transition as smooth as possible. Does that help with your question? Okay.
Thank you.
And next we have a phone number, which is ends in 2915.
Oh, hello. Thank you. This is Becky Steinbruner. Can you hear me?
Yep.
Thank you. I have a question. I see that the protection for the orchard at Deer Park Shopping Center is completely removed. Can you tell me about that? Is that being restored somehow, or protection restored? It's on page 5-30. The protection is completely lined out and there's no new language to address it.
Right. I will defer to Annie on this. She's our agricultural expert. It looks like she might be looking into that question for you.
Yes, thank you, Natisha. So in the general plan, in general, we have deleted policies that address specific sites. However, for that particular site as well as others, the policy has already been implemented through appropriate zoning for the site, which restricts development and other changes to the site.
Can there be auxiliary uses like events or something like that there? Would that be allowed under the new policies?
You know, I would probably need to check the specifics of that site, and I can get back to you with a specific answer on that parcel.
Okay. I have a question. It's sort of related, I guess, in terms of agricultural uses of land. On the, I was able to get a list of the 23 parcels that this sustainability plan is considering for rezoning. And one of them is the Stores Winery at 1326 Hames Road. That's scheduled to be rezoned. Is that that's agricultural land? How will that piece of property change under these new regulations? And why is it being rezoned?
Yeah, I'll let Stephanie handle this one.
Actually, we're going to discuss all of the rezonings at our next meeting, but I will say that a good chunk of them, 13 of the 23 parcels that are slated for some type of adjustment in their general plan, land use designation, and or their zoning are meant to usually align the general plan designation, the zoning, and the current land use. And then on that particular site, the general plan designation and the zoning are not aligned. And so the adjustment is meant to align those while still protecting the ag lands, and the adjustment is being made on an area of the property where there are no commercial ag soils. So that's the specifics on that one.
Okay, thank you. That makes sense. There were some interesting approvals made on that for events, in particular, large events. I wonder if you can point me to the part of the you talked about demolition by neglect, and I'm trying to find that in the document. What page is that in this chapter of the document, demolition by neglect?
I can check that for you and come back with an answer.
Okay, thank you. My final question, I don't know how many other people are waiting here. I'm on phone, so I have no idea. But regarding the water protection, groundwater protection, is there any thought being given to developing areas that are identified as prime managed aquifer recharge areas where the soils would support creating stormwater runoff collection to help recharge the groundwater? Is that being considered at all in the new document?
I can take a stab at this, and maybe Annie has something to add, but generally the policy changes are meant to support the planning efforts and the regulations that are in the county code already, help with agency coordination, and otherwise kind of support the protection of resources. So that particular item is not so much addressed as making sure that we're making the best use of our urban lands so that we don't put pressure on our recharge areas that, needing to develop or needing to expand the urban services line or anything like that. So it's not really the focus of this particular project. Annie, I don't know if there's any kind of policy language you want to add to that discussion.
Yeah, I'm not. There's nothing specific in the general plan that addresses that. I think, as Stephanie said, the intention is to support and be consistent with other plans and policies that do sort of have more specific guidance for drainage, including the Santa Cruz County design criteria.
Okay, I guess I have to look into that document to find out how that works. Do we have other people with their hands raised?
We do. We should switch over. Thank you, Becky.
Do you have that page number for the demolition by neglect before I move away?
Why don't we go ahead and move to the next question, then I can come back with an answer for that.
All right. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Becky. Did we have any other questions that we needed to address or comments?
I don't see anything in the chat.
Okay. Oh, Stephanie, you're muted.
There we go. We have a hand raised now. I think that is Ms. Steinbrenner. If you want to unmute yourself, you could speak.
Hello, this is Becky Steinbrenner again. I thought there were other people, so I didn't hear any. I'm going to jump in again, but please let me know if people do raise their hands, and I'll step back again. I want to know, for new development, is there a provision that there is adequate water to serve the development, especially with this new residential flex areas, even though it is multi-story and dense and doesn't have a lot of landscape around it, which doesn't help global warming at all. There's still going to be an increase in water use, and there is a state law somewhere. I tried to find it. I couldn't find it, but it says that new development has to prove there is adequate water to serve the development in the future. Is that language in this new document?
Thanks, Becky. Yeah, I know that all development is required to receive will serve letters at the time that their permit's being processed, but I will pass it on to Annie about any new policies that might be incorporated in our document.
Generally, the way that we do address water in the county is that we do defer to the water districts to make that determination whether there's adequate water to serve a particular development. And certainly if they make a determination that there's not, then the development couldn't be approved. So
that's kind of been a problem, though. I mean, Soquel Creek Water District, for example, is in a state of the basin is in critical overdraft, and they keep handing out will serve letters. So I don't know. I think there needs to be some quantitative analysis and oversight by the county, because it isn't always there with the water districts. They depend on that money coming in, quite frankly, for new connections. And case in point is Soquel Creek Water District. They're in overdraft, and they keep letting people hook up. And now that's the exact area where the very dense development is scheduled to go in this new plan, as I read it. So, is there any thought that there could be some objective criteria regarding water and new development?
Right. Thank you, Becky. Yeah, I'll pass it on to you. And then there are a couple other hands we can address some
Okay.
other comments. Yeah, thank you.
All right. Thank you very much.
So Annie, did you?
Oh, I'm sorry, you're
Yeah.
passing it to me. I was actually going to see if Stephanie had any thoughts on that.
Just that, you know, we work really hard to coordinate with the water districts and all the other districts when development is happening. And the county has certain roles, but determining will serve letters for the districts really isn't necessarily one of them. However, we will continue to coordinate, and we all recognize that, you know, water's a scarce resource. So that's just not quite the role of the county, but we'll take the comment and add it to the list of comments that we're receiving. And I think you'll find more information on that in the EIR when it's released.
Can I just add one thing, which is that the water resource agencies do prepare a plan that looks at future population within their service area, and they're required to prove in quantitative terms as best as they can that they can serve the number of households that are projected to be within that area. And the oversight authority to those water districts is vested at the state level, not at a local level. So we don't really have the authority to, we can comment on the plan, but we don't really have the authority to approve the plan. And that's done at the state level.
Yeah, and then I can just also, from the big picture perspective, as a county, we do have to be able to plan for future growth and the growth that is forecasted for our community. And we're doing that in the best way that's most conserving of resources, which includes more intense development in the urban areas, which is uses less water and helps to conserve resources in rural areas. I mean, I do have that in the question about the policy that encourages maintenance of historic resources. That is on page 5-128 of Chapter 5 of the General Plan, and that is policy ARC-8.2.7.
So there's two other people with their hands up. First is Carl Hild.
Thank you. Annie, when you did your presentation, you mentioned about the historic resources, and I think you made the criteria of 50 years. Is there a current listing of the historic resources, and is it updated now to, that would be 1972?
So the county does maintain an inventory of designated historic resources, and that is available here at the county. I don't think you're asking a list of all properties 50 years old or older, but that is available on the in the GIS system and the assessor's information. But we do have a list of designated historic resources in the county.
Okay, so I wasn't asking for anything over 50 years, but just as items would be identified as historic, it's now moving it up to 1972. Is that correct?
Oh, I see. In terms of the year 50 years ago. Yes, right.
Right.
So that would be right. That would be the threshold. Yes.
Okay, so it keeps moving forward. All right, thank you.
Yes, yes, you're welcome.
And then we have another question from Brendan Quirk.
Great. It's just circling back to the same question. Stephanie, would you mind clarifying, and maybe I can be more clear in my question. Is there a date at which this code change would happen? And if a permit application was entered before that date, it wouldn't, these code changes would not apply to that?
We don't have an exact date because we are going through a public process on a very large project, but we are hoping to have the Board of Supervisors get through the adoption process in November, December. I'm not sure. We can have an offline conversation if you have a particular parcel or a particular part of the code that you're interested in. But generally, you would need to meet the current code. And again, we try to kind of work with the development review planners to give them a heads up on where other options and other things may be changing in upcoming ordinances.
That's really clear. Thank you. And I would like to reach out offline. Thank you so much.
Yeah, feel free to reach out to me. Thank you.
Okay, so I still see nothing in the chat, which means we can go back to Becky.
And sorry, Becky, just before we turn to your question again, I just wanted to share that we've posted some links here on this slide. So there's various resources available to you on the project website. You can learn more about the project, review draft documents, take the project survey, and submit comments on the project documents. I know there was a bit of an error with the poll today, but there is a similar question included in our survey if you'd like to provide further comment on the agricultural topics or any of the topics that we've discussed today. So just wanted to share some of these and highlight some of these links available to you. Go ahead, Becky.
Thank you very much. I appreciate your letting me continuing to ask questions. And Ms. Murphy, thank you for giving me the number of the page 5-128, where it talks about demolition by neglect. But I don't really see any strong language about that in ARC-8.2.7. It just says encourage the maintenance and upkeep of historic resources to avoid the need for major rehabilitation and to reduce the risks of demolition, loss through fire or neglect, or impacts from natural disasters. How will that encouragement be implemented? That's what I want to know. Are there ordinances that will be attached to this? How will that be implemented?
So the general plan is a 20-year document that sort of lays a framework for future code changes and future policy decisions. So that policy is sort of providing support for for future code changes that could implement new requirements for maintenance of historic structures. But right now it's more laying the framework for that shift.
So then this language would open the door for a group such as the Historic Resources Commission to make a recommendation again to the Board of Supervisors to adopt an ordinance regarding demolition by neglect and really put some teeth into it? How is this going to change anything from what it currently is?
So as I said, it would provide some policy support if the Board of Supervisors and was agreed that would be an appropriate action to take.
Okay, so it kind of depends on the will of the board still. The language is there, but it would depend on the will of the board. Okay, let me think. Thank you very much. I appreciate it. I think my only other question is there attention given to new large developments or dense developments regarding, especially those that could be in the wildland-urban interface, attention being given to secondary access for fire evacuation. Is that anywhere in this document regarding open space and?
Yeah, there's a few elements of the general plan that are not being amended as a part of this project, and the public safety element is one of them, and that element does deal with wildfire. And the reason why we're not making changes to it is that it's just gone through a pretty big update itself, and changes to that document or to that element of the general plan are pending at the Coastal Commission right now. And actually, I take that back. They approved the majority of the amendments with modifications. So those modifications would head back to the Board of Supervisors. So this project just for that reason, because that element deals with public safety issues and natural hazards and the like, this project does not address that as much because that's already in place in that element.
Okay, thank you. That helps me understand how this interfaces possibly with the open space preserves that could have vegetation management easements in conjunction with them for fire protection and fire defensible space. But I think that you're saying that would be more applicable to the public safety element rather than the open space element. Is that right?
Yes, and I don't know, Annie, do you have any thoughts on that to add?
Yeah, just that I do recall policies specifically about, making sure there's fire access and addressing the urban wildland interface in the safety element. So you might take a look at that element.
Okay.
And of course, just to add to that, we also have the local hazard mitigation plan that was just adopted last year too. So that's a good document to look at.
Okay, that was a big one. I remember that one. All right, thank you. I think that answers my questions. I appreciate your time. Thank you.
We want to do a last call for any comments before we close the meeting out tonight. Okay. Our next meeting is on April 20th, and that will be on the code modifications and the rezoning. We've also scheduled another meeting on May 9th to go over the draft environmental impact report that's been prepared. That report will be available on the county's website on Thursday. And ways to submit comments on that particular document are included on the slide. We also encourage people to visit the project website to learn more about the project in general, and to take the survey and to submit comments in the public comment portal. And I would just add that hard copies of the documents have been sent over to the main library in downtown Santa Cruz, because we had a hard time getting all the libraries, Capitola Library, to kind of post the documents in a timely manner. So we have added them there. And otherwise, I hope you'll join us at our next meetings. And thank you very much.
I have one more question. Can I sneak one quick one in? Hello?
Sure, go ahead.
Okay. Sorry. I had a note here. What does it mean on page 18 by unique farmland? I could not find a definition of that. What does that mean, unique farmland?
I would recommend going to the State Department of Conservation website, and they have definitions for all of that is a state designation, prime, unique, and farmland of statewide importance. And I believe that references local farmland designations as opposed to the prime or statewide importance.
Well, shouldn't that definition be in this document, though? I mean, usually there are definitions.
No, because it references state criteria rather than county designation criteria.
But it's on the map on page 18, recognized as unique farmland. So why isn't it defined in this document?
Okay, well, thank you for your comment. We will note that.
Okay, thank you.
Everybody, thank you very much. And we hope to we hope that you'll join us again next week and in the coming meetings. Have a very good night, everybody.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.